in London. He's an Iranian writer and law academic at the University of Portsmouth. So it's a pleasure. Thank you for your time. Firstly, these demonstrations seem to have taken on a life of their own. We're seeing protesters recently in central Tehran waving their headscarves. Do you think acts like this are likely to trigger further violence between security forces and protesters and possibly the so-called morality police?
Thank you for having me. I believe that these wave of protests is been quite extraordinary. We have never seen such protests in terms of the scale and the number of the cities involved. They've been brutally suppressed by the police, security forces, and what we call them as the plainclothes forces. And this is for the first time that we can say that the protesters are actually at some points defending themselves. So what we're seeing in terms of the clashes between the protesters and police is in fact the result of the brutal suppression of the peaceful protests that started in the beginning of the last week when the protesters tried to actually get into the streets and demand justice for Mahsa Amini in peaceful way, but they faced brutal suppression by the police. So the protests escalated, and what we are seeing right now is a very angry, outrageous scene that the people saw, and this created lots of anger all across the country, which is still ongoing.
What could make things worse are the Supreme Leader's accusations that US and Israel are behind the rallies. Do you think that's a credible accusation or not?
That is some sort of a pattern for reacting to the protests in the past and right now. It's been some sort of obsolete technique used by the authority in Iran just to link these kind of protests to forces outside. What we can see actually is that the people of Iran are quite alone in their fight against this regime. The internet has been shut down. Aside from condemnations and verbal oral support from the politicians all across the world, we don't see any actual practical support for the Iranians exercising their right to protest. So it is quite visible, quite clear that there is no such a link between the protests and the foreign countries. What has been always tried by the authority in Iran is to frame the protest as something as a plan by the foreign state that gives the security forces a green light to suppress more brutally and to kill people in a larger scale. So that has been tried and it's been useless. And what we saw, for example, in terms of what Ali Khamenei, Supreme Leader of the Islamic Republic, today tried to address was that he repeated those allegations again and again while these protests is still continuing. But when we look at his pattern of reacting to the protests in the past, we see that he appears in public when mostly the protests been suppressed. So he comes and address the public to present his speech as a final word, as an ending to the protest. But what we are seeing right now today in Iran is that more than 10 universities all across the country are now protesting. People are still in the streets while he is trying to pretend that the protest has been over, and he is also repeating those allegations which are completely baseless. All the people around the world know that these allegations are completely baseless. Also, the people of Iran, they don't pay attention to this kind of propaganda. They're just trying to fight for their basic and fundamental rights.
Okay, Professor Omid Shams in London at the University of Portsmouth. Appreciate the conversation. Thank you.